With every presentation I will commence with the following. Ethics is not there to judge people, but to judge the actions of people, whether they are right or wrong. Ethics tells us what to do, what not to do, and what choices to make. We have to understand choices, actions, and motives. Motives drive choices and actions. And for every action there is always an equal and opposite reaction from those choices. Now if a motive justifies an action for one, then it justifies the same action for anyone employing that motive, or otherwise one would be inconsistent and incongruent with one's principle. Now we have to differentiate legal and ethical. These terms are not the same. What may be legal may not be necessarily ethical, and in some parts of the world, what may be ethical may not be legal. Now we have to distinguish relative ethics from absolute ethics. Relative ethics come from man, because these ethics change with place and location. All theories of ethics fall short from absolute ethics of nature, which are based in harmony and coherence. These natural laws can only be discovered and not be created. These ethics never change, with time and location. What is ethical in one place is ethical at all places, irrespective of location. And what is ethical at one point in time, is ethical at all points in time, irrespective of time difference. Now I do not discuss any topics based on these relative ethics of man. If I do fall under one of these following ethical codes in some instances, then it has been coincidental or that ethics is in agreement with the natural laws. Touching coworkers, customers or other staff members is a very controversial subject. In one country it amounts to an act of sexual harassment, while in another it's just a simple gesture and nothing to it. There are many instances where senior executive, managers, or even CEOs have manifested inappropriate touch to female coworker, not intended as a sexual advance, but seen as a sexual advance, nonetheless. Joe Biden, the US president, is well known to touch his staff members on the shoulders, arms and back with female and male workers. So what does ethics tell us about the touching of other people? As usual, as you have listened in the intro, I only give views based on what is absolute ethical standards based on nature's coherence and harmony's laws. The act of touching another person, without their express consent, is an act of trespassing into that person's body. The person touching the other is going out of their jurisdiction and into another person's own sovereignty to force oneself into their property. A person's body is their own property and thus cannot be touched, patted, tapped without a consent from the owner. Anything else amounts to just ethically wrong conduct. Of course, there are exceptions to this. And those instances are in an emergency situation, where a coworker has suffered an accident and needs immediate attention, which requires one to be in physical contact with the other person. If not, the situation for the person would be worse, such cases for the needing of resuscitation, where it is required to provide CPR, or the person may lose their life. The person would require to be touched, moved and positioned in such a way that it would require touch. To perform chest compression on the person or mouth-to-mouth breathing. If it is a female worker who is the victim and the male is the assistant, then such cases are required for touching. And under ethically right standards it would be quite acceptable. Now touching or tapping someone on the arms, back, legs or any part of the body is not acceptable as a professional conduct in the office, and not to mention being an unethical behavior to start with. You do not need to touch someone to communicate something to them. Of course, unless one is vision impaired or has hearing problems and requires the person's immediate attention, or for that person warning of something important. Other acceptable instances would be for team sports, where physical contact is implied. Or training drills in areas where touch is required, such as team trust exercises, hugging exercises, where the outcome is already known to all participants. Other instances are where touching happens by accident, such as bumping into each other. A quick apology is sufficient to address the trespassing of the body. Another instance that is acceptable is in certain disciplines, such as nurses, doctors, dentists, tailors, hairdressers, personal trainers, physical therapists, masseuse and such professions, where it is deemed that touching would be required to perform the specific service. Nonetheless, it is advisable to let the customer or patient know what is going to happen to them. It is more for etiquette reasons rather than ethical reasons, as the patient knows the process or has an idea of the process that he or she needs and thus touching is expected. Not many companies are aware of this ethically correct way to behave in the workplace when it comes to touching. Netflix has a 5-second touch, that it is okay to touch the employee, but only for less than 5 seconds, and anything else is inappropriate. They also have a 5-second policy not to stare at other coworkers longer than that. This is a very typical example of a corporation who has no idea about ethically correct behaviors in the workplace. These policies are just based on what management thinks it's acceptable and what is not acceptable in their views. Now looking at a person for more than 5 minutes and banning this is plainly ridiculous. Not only that, it is actually violating a person's natural right to look wherever they please or desire to look, but also it is commanding people to act in this certain way, which in itself is unethical to start with. Because it does not give them the right to take away other people's right to do what they have been given by nature to do, eyes to look and ears to hear. If the observed person is uncomfortable being looked at, they can raise this issue with the person in question, leave, move their heads away or eyes away. The other person would get the message. Yet, Netflix, not banning touching other people in their workplace is just wrong policy because it is violating a person's right not to be touched in the first place by anyone who just wants to. This policy deliberately promotes the invading of someone's body and permits an area of a coworker's body to be touched without the prior consent from them, which is unethical in itself. Another misapplied policy in the workplace is the taking of photos of employees or even filming them without their express permission. This behavior is ethically wrong. One needs people's permission whether they want to be photographed or filmed. It does not matter whether they are an employee or a customer and they are inside the actual company. The reason that one needs consent is because one is violating their privacy to remain anonymous. Filming and photographing are an invasion of privacy. Coworkers, customers or guests have a right to privacy irrespective where they are in the premises of the building. There are so many draconian policies in the workplace that it amazes me that these companies are still in operation. Businesses with this level of consciousness operating in the marketplace are bound to be going out of business soon. And not before their trust and confidence with the public and employees suffer enormously, especially today where the markets are more competitive than ever. The touching of other people without their consent is very common. The lawsuits and media headlines that we are seeing are only the tip of the iceberg. Jessica Barraza filed a lawsuit against the electric vehicle maker, Tesla, that fostered a climate of sexual harassment at its Fremont, California factory, where she says she was subjected to catcalling and physical touching. In her own words, after almost 3 years of experiencing all the harassment, it robs your sense of security. It almost dehumanizes you, said Barraza, a production associate who works on the Tesla Model 3. Ms. Fairley and Ms. Reddick joined 5,000 other women who have worked at corporate-run McDonald's restaurants across Florida since April 2016 and experienced sexual harassment on the job. The lawsuit, filed in the company's home state of Illinois, centers on a particular McDonald's restaurant near Orlando, Florida. The plaintiffs say that numerous women were subject to sexual harassment in a hostile work environment. Ms. Fairley says the comments escalated to unwanted touching. Buffalo, New York. Walmart Stores East will pay $410,000 and provide other relief to settle a sexual harassment lawsuit brought by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. From 2014 to 2018, a male employee of Walmart's store in Geneva, New York regularly made unwelcome sexual comments and advances to female coworkers and touched female coworkers without their consent. The Equal Employment Opportunity Commission alleged that Walmart management knew of the conduct for years, including having received written complaints, yet did nothing. It actually gets worse in developing countries, where ethics are thrown out the window, and only follow the laws that are there, if any. In the description notes, there is a link for a brief on business ethics. You're welcome to download it. If you want to be informed of more content when it comes out, you can click the subscription and notification button. If you want a specific topic discussed, you can let me know in the comments below.